we're about to get our teeth into that astonishing press conference between President Trump and Keir Starmer yesterday afternoon. But before we do, the Lionesses in Downing Street last night on parade. I was saying earlier, when you think about big sporting moments of victory, we've had celebrations in the past in Downing Street or in Trafalgar Square. But I think for it to be happening on the Mall in front of Buckingham Palace, that's quite unusual. Maybe, do you think I'm right about that? Is the unprecedented nature of this victory meaning the Palace has decided we're going to give it special treatment?
I think probably. And don't forget, Prince William is president of the Football Association.
That's true as well.
He was there for
Is he going to Deer?
He was there for the final. He'll be there. He was there for the final.
I think the 66th World Cup winners was Downing Street.
Yeah.
When we won the World Cup at cricket,
yeah.
It was Downing Street and then Trafalgar Square, but not the Palace.
I think it's great. And look, it is unprecedented, isn't it? Back-to-back wins. First time they've won abroad on foreign soil. I'm glad they're throwing the red carpet out.
I think it's cut price, actually.
Why?
You can get more people in Trafalgar Square. There's greater disruption to traffic, there's no doubt. If you just shut the Mall and that area in front of the Palace, you don't get as much traffic disruption. And you might want to get the backdrop there. Where's the dad? Where's his dad? Where's the kid? He's on his holidays, isn't he? He's not
but it is the
back.
iconic backdrop. It is probably the most photographed, famous building in the world.
No, it's not.
Kevin, are you...
Hang on. The Houses of Parliament, St Paul, are way ahead of Buckingham Palace.
Are you pouring cold water on our celebrations today of our Lionesses' epic victory?
He's got to get a dig
people go along, and I hope they have a great day, because it is fantastic. And I think the reason you lost the battle yesterday in the Good Morning Britain poll, Charlotte, on a bank holiday, didn't even get the penalties, you just lost in real time, is because a lot of people are on holiday. Schools are off. So a lot of people can take their kids along if you can get away from work. I was reading The Guardian, and there was one 30-year-old woman, former footballer herself, who she'd thrown a couple of sickies to be there yesterday.
People are creating their own bank holidays. It was 58% against in the end, sadly.
But, you know, you won't get as many people around Buckingham Palace. You can't, as you can in Trafalgar Square. All the big sporting celebrations have been quite rightly in Trafalgar Square, but political moments too, because you can get more people in it. Maybe they're going to be invited into Buckingham Palace, who knows, by the Prince of Wales. I think their women will be thrilled to be there, because it's a great national centre. Much more than Downing Street, and much more than the Houses of Parliament. And many of them will be back at the Palace again soon, getting their coming weeks, getting their gongs. Yeah. I'd have thought so. Yeah. I'd have thought they'd... I don't think they're all going to get... I can't quite see that they're all going to get damehoods, which is the equivalent of the knighthood. Well, there were calls for Serena Wiegman to get an honorary damehood, I think she should get that. She's got CBE now. Yeah. And give the women OBEs, CBEs, MBEs, but a 19-year-old damehood, I wouldn't think so. I have in a way always thought it's a bit just handing out honours like this when you're being paid to do whatever you do is a bit odd. But if you're gonna do it, I can see they deserve it.
But it's a moment of national significance, though, isn't it?
And it was shameful the way some of the England 1966 football team got nothing.
So poor old Keir Starmer wasn't able to be at the Downing Street reception last night.
I think he'd rather have been.
Going
through that terrible press conference.
FaceTimed in.
Oh, God.
But he was instead... I mean, in all my time watching politics, in Britain and around the world, I don't think I've ever seen events like this, where you just have the president... I mean, this is in the UK.
Yeah, he was guest of our Prime Minister, and Trump took hold of that press conference from beginning to end and dominated. In his own golf club.
Yeah.
It was
his own golf club.
Extraordinary, as you say, wasn't it?
And it was
his own golf club, which has a picture of a smiling Prince Andrew on the wall.
Usually it might
be a weird world.
It might be a word or two, but the fact that he held a whole question after question, gave lengthy answers to which, Keir Starmer did not know what he was going to say.
All sorts of advice that the Prime Minister does not want.
I think we should give people a flavour of this. Yes. Because if you didn't see the news last night, you may have missed some of this. I mean, our problem is there's so many to choose from. I think, should we start with Donald Trump being asked by a reporter whether he's going to visit London during the state visit in September?
Yes.
And Donald Trump decides to share his views of the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, where they've had clashes in the past. Poor old Keir Starmer. I mean, how does he react?
That was awkward.
Pretty feeble response from the Prime Minister. Hang on, Mr President, he could have said. He's won an unprecedented third term. blah, blah, blah. Look, I agree he's a terrible mayor of London, but I thought that was so embarrassing.
I mean, all those parents whose kids at primary school now get free school meals would disagree.
He's
the
turned
transport
London into
network
a car park.
is being
he's
turned
turned
out
London
much
into
better.
a car park.
And you were wrong about you were wrong about you, Les, which didn't get which Labour made gains on. Look, he's an Islamophobe, Trump. He's a bigot. He hates Sadiq Khan because he is a British Muslim. Let's not ignore that. Let us not ignore that. Well, we saw that from his first term.
Let's not ignore the fact he's turned London into a car park, whacked us all with higher taxes, and also spends more time flying around the world on global warming when he should be in London sorting out the record levels of knife crime and gun crime. He's a disaster.
If London's been turned into a car park, how did you get in here this morning in a car?
Because I came in at 5 o'clock.
In a car. You go back in a car.
Try it at 9
o'clock.
I go on a motorbike.
Let's have a look now.
It's stuck.
Before we get ingrained in transport conversations.
And also, we've got record levels of crime, and that's all on Sadiq's watch.
Of course, this all goes back to... I remember when I was doing a documentary, I went to Mar-a-Lago and I met the Trump supporters in Mar-a-Lago. One of them said to me, "Are you from London?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Are you safe?" And I said, "Yes." And she said, "Aren't there Muslim no-go areas in London?"
And the answer is no.
Said, no. But, of course, she said that because Donald Trump had tweeted that on Twitter.
Yeah.
And that was when Sadiq Khan slapped him down. Yeah. And that is where the row between Donald Trump and Sadiq Khan started quite a few years ago. Donald Trump says things about London, which even Andrew would have to agree is complete garbage.
He's also, childishly, the mayor, put those Donald Trump masked balloons into the sky. Pathetic, childish and
he gave them permission. He gave protesters who asked for permission to do it in the first time. There's
Grow up, Mr. Mayor.
There's fact and fiction.
Yeah, and you peddle in the fiction.
There is the facts that Sadiq Khan can produce, and there is the fiction that Trump mouths, some of which is now, sadly, being parroted by very right-wing reactionaries.
OK, well, let's just have...
Muslim no-go areas in London, Andrew?
No.
Sadiq Khan's reaction to this, because he said Sadiq is delighted that President Trump wants to come to the greatest city in the world. He'd see how our diversity makes us stronger, not weaker, richer, not poorer. Perhaps these are the reasons why a record number of Americans have applied for British citizenship under his presidency.
Yeah, don't believe a word he says.
But there's a crime issue in London, just as there is in parts of the West Midlands, North East, North West, South Wales, Scotland, elsewhere. But I tell you, our cities are far safer than American cities, as we wake up to 4 people being killed by a gunman in New York, which is, sadly, a regular occurrence.
The thing which is so amazing about this, though, the reason why this kind of just rips everything up is, you know, can you imagine the other way round?
No.
Keir Starmer goes to visit Donald Trump in the White House. They're doing a press conference, and Keir Starmer suddenly decides to do a running commentary on the Epstein files or Black Lives Matter and American policing or gun crime in schools and shootings in schools. It would be... I mean, you would never go to another country and just slag off what is going on. But Donald Trump just does it.
There's no rule book.
And I tell you what, he doesn't like wind turbines, does he? Should we hear what he said about... Because on the golf course, you can see a lot of wind turbines, so I think that's why he's particularly exercised.
I also thought the Trump commentary on small boats is also, like, astonishing, not least because he starts off by saying, "I know nothing about it," and then chooses, despite that, to... I mean, I love the idea that other countries are sending people on this
which is rubbish.
But also, the Prime Minister's response was rubbish. We're sending them back,
Well, there are
the deal,
record numbers
which hasn't been approved by the EU yet, 50 a week, and thousands are coming every week.
Which is far more than the couple of hundred you would have sent to Rwanda.
He was going to smash the gang. He failed miserably. This is the issue that's causing all these problems outside these hotels in Epping and all around the country.
Are you Donald Trump in
Hang on, I'm going to finish, Kevin. I'm going to finish. The majority of them on those boats are young men in their 30s who are economic migrants. They've got no passports. We don't know where they're from or whether they're a threat.
You do know the majority of people, once they arrive in Britain, are found to have a legal right.
And Labour were going to close the migrant hotels more than ever.
You're ignoring
facts. Scandal what's
happening. You're Donald Trump in disguise.
Well, let me just ask you this question about the handling of this, because, as I said, it's totally unprecedented. We had the same thing with the President of the European Commission the day before. These long...
She hardly got a word in edgeways.
She didn't get a word in edgeways either. To me, it's like, and we've all had this experience, whether you are 15 or 25 or our age, you've been with an older relative, he suddenly decides to kind of sound off in an inappropriate way, and your choices, do you argue with them, which is even more embarrassing, or do you just keep silent and hope that they will in the end shut up?
But it would be that relative who has a huge inheritance and loads of money, and do you want it? Because
so you've got to keep them on side.
Yeah, you wouldn't take it from anybody else, but you have the leader of the world's hyperpower, the most powerful country in the world, economically and militarily. So you've got Starmer is... I'm amazed he hasn't choked on swallowing his pride by having to put up with that.
Is that right? So are you saying that Keir Starmer has no choice but to agree to that press conference, to sit there for over an hour, just to absorb it all? I mean, you know, there is a real risk that he looks weak.
He could have done the handshake at the front of the House with Lady Starmer next to him, and then they'd gone in for a private meeting. It could have been over in 5 minutes.
He does have a choice, and I think we see in France, Emmanuel Macron takes a somewhat different line and is prepared to confront him more directly. But Starmer has taken the view that he has to keep this bromance going. Now, he can argue he got some results on Ukraine, only some results, because, of course, the arms supplies were stopped at one point, but they've resumed, even if they're now having to buy, Ukraine's having to buy the weapons. He can say Britain got a slightly better deal than the European Union, as far as we're aware about their deal.
And all the European leaders are furious about it.
Gaza.
All these European leaders are now saying that the Germans, the Spanish...
French Prime Minister said that the EU trade deal is a dark day for Europe.
They're all saying Britain got a better deal.
Perhaps they better get into Brexit.
But seeing a Prime Minister reduced to sidekick Starmer is not very good for Britain.
And then he's going to go through this all over again at the state visit in September.
So would you have advised Keir Starmer not to have done that press conference?
Yes, I'd have said handshake at the front of the building and go inside for a private meeting. That's often how these things are done, especially as he's coming here.
But even if that's not what President Trump wants to do.
Yeah, because, look, he was supposed to be coming for a private visit.
But
I'm glad he didn't, because it was fantastic TV. Fantastic TV to watch. And the Prime Minister was humiliated.
Donald, this is all about you, not me. It's all... I don't want to hog any of your limelight. I'll see you before and I'll see you after. I mean, you'd have to do it that way rather than say, I think you're an unhinged, deranged nutter and I don't want anything to do with you. But you could do it. Slaver all over him, that's what he likes. But don't do it in public, because it's awful.
And just say, if President Donald Trump is watching our programme this morning, I mean, Kevin, he has these views, you know, he says these things, but, you know, he's actually a nice guy. Don't worry about it, Donald.
Yeah, but you know what I love? Is, of course, he's saying his mother's Scottish. He's a migrant himself, son of migrants himself. German father, wasn't it? And Scottish mother. There we are, and he's the migrant's child.
What do we make of his advice to Keir Starmer on how to win an election then and how to beat Nigel Farage? Because he talks about cutting tax, cutting immigration, cutting crime.
Well, cutting taxes, we've raised taxes. I mean, the Tories raised taxes to an all-time high. This lot have raised them even higher.
Andrew, there is a point there here, isn't it, which is that Donald Trump is trying to cut immigration, trying to cut taxes.
Well, he's cutting...
And how's he paying for it? By a massive increase in public borrowing, which, if Britain tried to do that, would be
But on immigration, he's had huge successes on tackling illegal migration from Mexico. Huge successes.
There was no mention of...
Huge successes.
There's no mention of the National Health Service and getting it off its knees and reviving it. No mention of public services, which are huge issues in Britain. I think cutting taxes... raising living standards, yes, but how you do that is rather more complex. True about the migration issue. There's no doubt that is an issue, but how do you do it? And you don't do it by adopting Trump rhetoric and speaking about an island of strangers.
There is no possibility, whether the next government is Conservative, Labour or Reform, you know, in these years, we're not going to be cutting taxes.
No.
Nobody.
They're going to go up again. They are going to go up again under HREs, breaking yet another manifesto.
Having had under Rishi Sunak the biggest tax rise in a parliament since the Second World War.
Yeah, who would have thought tax could have to go up again?
Well,
if borrowing at sky-high levels?
If you're paying for COVID, the disaster that is Brexit, then you have Liz Truss and Putin's invasion, never mind going back to the global financial collapse of 2008.
And the economy not growing.
Yeah, you could, look, we're living on a legacy of past errors.
Yeah, three
quarters of what Rachel Reeves borrows goes on paying the costs of previous borrowing.
Well, and she's...
A lot of it inherited from you.
And she's raised taxes to unprecedented levels, having said she wouldn't, and they're going to have to go up again.
Let's now turn to what was said about Gaza, because this could potentially signal a shift, couldn't it, for what is about to happen? Because President Trump talked about the pictures that he's seen, the starvation that he's seen, and what that could mean. So signalling a shift there, not only with aid, but more involvement. And we know, obviously, you know, this is potentially key to sorting it out.
I don't really think there was much of a shift at all, actually, and the British position has been consistent for years and years and years that we will recognise Palestinian state when the conditions are right. Starmer's going to chair a cabinet meeting today. They're going to talk about it, and he's going to restate that same position.
Do you think
there's going to be any movement on the timing.
Do you think it'll be consensual in the cabinet today? No,
it'll be very difficult, and the parliamentary party is in ferment. Talk about 150 Labour MPs at least want the position to change. They want recognition now.
This cabinet meeting, in some ways, is just a stunt.
I think it's a mistake.
The foreign secretary's not going to be there, isn't he? Isn't he out in the States?
Yeah.
Isn't he elsewhere?
And some are having to zoom in. I think it's a mistake.
But I don't
make him
think,
impotent.
Yeah, I don't think there'll be any open defiance, like saying you're wrong. You must recognise Palestine now. But the question of Trump, he's spoken about people starving before, and aid has to go in, and nothing has happened. Is he still arming and sustaining the Israeli forces? Yes, and that is the key. Now, I think the UK should recognise a Palestinian state, and we should have done it a long time ago. But in truth, would it make that much difference with the Israeli government? The answer is no. We're a middling power. Israel is armed and sustained by the US. Trump has all the cards. Is he going to really play him? Well, there's no sign of that.
And when Macron's called for it straight away, the first major leader to do so, he was dismissed as reckless by Marco Rubio, Trump's foreign secretary.
I think there's 140 countries recognised.
Starmer, he didn't mind him taking a position on statehood, so that does signal a shift,
He's a minor player. He's a minor player.
See, I'm not totally sure you're right, Andrew, and I'm kind of inclined to think that Charlotte's onto something here. If you go back last Monday, when we had Michael Gove on the news panel, when you were away, Andrew, I mean, he was taking a very strong pro-Israel line, saying that the starvation was happening because Hamas was manipulating things and controlling the food supplies. It's all a deliberate plot in order to show Israel in a bad light. I think that is the kind of thing you might have expected also to have been said by the American president 6 months ago, 9 months ago, but it feels to me as though the tone is changing, that Trump is becoming frustrated. American public opinion is seeing these pictures on the television. I'm not sure that Netanyahu is as secure in his relationship with Donald Trump as he was 3 and 6 months ago.
I still think Trump would want a proper permanent ceasefire, and all those hostages that Hamas have got, still over 50, some of whom are dead, the dead body returned before he would even contemplate.
But Netanyahu doesn't want that, and neither does Putin in Ukraine. And Trump's rhetoric towards Putin is becoming more aggressive. And I think there's a frustration with Israel too.
The hostage releases have been achieved by and large through ceasefires, and that is what is required. And of course, they should never have been taken. The pogrom should never have happened. Didn't happen in a vacuum. I mean, there were big issues before that, but anyway, they were terrible acts. You'll get the hostages released with a ceasefire, not being rescued. But we hear Trump on Ukraine and Russia, and he's all over the place. He's kind of all over the place on Israel. He keeps wanting to nominate himself and have others nominate him for a Nobel Peace Prize. And I think Keir Starmer will have gone away from that press conference relieved somebody said, would you back President Trump for a Nobel Peace Prize? Because he would have been caught in an incredibly difficult position sitting next to him if that had been asked. But what has Trump actually achieved?
Hamas is still active, and Hamas still wants to destroy Israel.
Look, Hamas is beaten. It's defeated. Its leaders are dead.
No,
and it is being used as an excuse for ethnic cleansing what is now arguably genocide. And where Trump and I get worried about this, because he talks about starvation, is it's not long ago he was circulating videos on Trump Gaza and advocating ethnically cleansing that area of 2 million people, creating them into refugees and forcing them into other countries.
But he doesn't like to be humiliated and embarrassed, and he said that he would get peace between Russia and Ukraine on day one, and that hasn't happened. And he said he'd get a ceasefire with Israel, and that hasn't happened.
I'd like to be that hopeful, but you say he doesn't like to be humiliated and embarrassed. That's true. So he just says he hasn't been humiliated and embarrassed. And he claims victories and triumphs where none exist. He uses his alternative view of the world, which is a completely distorted and false and fake view.
Can I just throw in what...
No, I was just going to move... But if you want...
Online safety.
Yes. Is that what you're about to move on to?
Yeah, I was, but you do.
Let's do it. We've got Peter Carr, the Technology Secretary, coming on later on to talk about the online safety as well. Last week, of course, the government introduced these age verification checks, didn't they, for websites that host adult content. Reform have promised to repeal the Online Safety Act. They're saying it's, you know... a utopian situation, aren't they? And
huge assault on free speech.
Yeah, but it turns out that a lot of people are getting around these age verification checks because there's been a huge surge in VPNs, which is this virtual private networks where people can then log in and, like they're in a different country, they can choose whichever country they want their profile to be coming from. So is this kind of making a mockery, then, of the age verification checks if it turns out that actually a lot of people are able to circumvent what's happening?
No, it's just rather like if you have clubs and pubs and kids come with fake ID, it's going to happen online too, but it doesn't mean you don't have age requirements to go into a pub or a club or do lots of other things. Look, it's a game of chase all the time. But just to get rid of them all, as Farage says, well, how are you going to protect kids from incredibly harmful content, encouraging them to take their own lives? How are you going to do it?
I was quite surprised at his press conference yesterday that Nigel Farage would say, I'm going to repeal the whole online safety bill. This is our way of trying to protect our children, tackle child pornography online, to try and stop all this... this harm being done, and you might say, are they getting the balance right? But to say I'm just going to dump the whole thing, wasn't...
I was surprised, but you see some of the points they make... A Tory MP called Katie Lamb, she's a future rising star, in my view, made a very important speech in the Commons about grooming gangs. They say that's been blocked. Now, a speech made in Parliament by Katie Lamb has been blocked by this online act. Now, that shouldn't be happening. Parliamentarian speeches...
Of course not.
So there are issues with this legislation which are inhibiting free speech, but to ban it completely, it could be very retrograde.
Yeah, but if that is the case for that Lamb speech... It
was a very important speech.
Then that needs correcting, and that is a flaw. But you would want to block grooming gangs, for instance, or networking, advocating it, defending themselves, saying, oh, what's wrong with being a grooming gang? The girls are consenting, why can't they consent? Yeah. That is the stuff you want to block. Now, would Farage just let all that go through by having no controls, no restrictions? Is that what he's going to do?
And also, I think people also have a concern that our police spending too much time gazing at computer screens looking for potential social media offences
rather than being out
in the community, out in the beat. I think that's a concern for people.
Hang on. If we're talking about networks behind encryption, having a torrent of child sex images being sold around the world, I kind of want the police to be on that.
Yeah, but remember, just a few months ago, the couple at home who'd been complaining to a school about some school admissions policy, 4 coppers turn up at the house. Ridiculous.
Yeah, we never got the full story. We never got the full story on that.
You need 4 police officers going to a middle-class couple of people complaining about their school's admissions policy.
Criminals work online. That's why the police spend a lot of time now trying to crack phones and computer programs and the dark web because it prevents...
So they're just following where the crime is.
And also horrific child sexual exploitation.
People want to see coppers dealing with shoplifting and phones getting nicked and cars getting nicked. Bread and butter issues which really matter.
Do you want them to be hunting
includes child pornography online?
I hear that, but I tell you, Ed, there is a perception that the police are prioritising too much online and not enough in everyday crime.
It's a false perception.
Well, fine, is it?
Your example of the couple, it wasn't online, that was just about something happened to this...
No, they're in line, the messages were picked up online.
It wasn't just online, though, was it?
We will hold that thought.